industry in Virginia City. This is narrative that drove extractive industry throughout the state, throughout its history. And it's advantageous for us to counter that narrative here and now. And the only way to truly counter that narrative is to reconceptualize the function of the land. By putting the health and safety of the river at the center of our world and understanding, that is a way that we can do that. So the late Norm Harry would always say that what's good for the fish is good for the people. And I think that we need to interrogate that a little bit and understand that a little bit. The argument that he's making here is that we have nothing if we don't have the health and safety of the river. We don't have clean drinking water, we don't have fish, we don't have food. We don't have a way, like this is at the core of everything. This is at the core of life here in the Truckee River Basin. And I really, we are operating in a lineage of activism that has, been throughout Nevada history, and especially I want to call your attention to more recent Nevada history. Even the function of activists are the ones that have kept nuclear waste out of our backyards. Many of whom are here, are represented within the Sierra Club, within Third Act. This is within the former group Citizens Alert. Like this group worked with the Western Shoshone and kept us from glowing irradiated green. We need to, if I want to impart anything with you and for you to take anything away here today, is that we need to put the health and safety of the river at the forefront. And we're in a lineage of activists that have done that, and we will continue to do that. And it will not stop here today, no matter what you decide. We will fight like hell for the health and safety of the river because we understand that our entire world exists because the Truckee River exists and is healthy and safe. So I would like to please have you consider a moratorium on data centers. I would like to consider not approving data centers like many states have done, like many municipalities have done. Please. Thank you so much. You're going to hear a lot of really good comments, a lot of really good facts. I look forward to it.
Thanks, C.
Tara Tran, followed by Sheena Duckworth, followed by Jerry Mifsud.
Hi, my name is Tara Tran, and I also organize with Water Over Data. We are an indigenous-led organizing group led by the Harry family. As mentioned before, they have a very long history of fighting for protection for water in our region. I do want to call that, obviously, I support C1, and I would like you guys to support C1, but I think as far as what that will entail, just know that that is going to be a conversation beyond just we need policy. We need robust policy that protects the watershed and includes the full consent of all Native tribes and impacted Native peoples in the watershed. And that includes the Washoe, and that includes the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, who feels the most effects of impacts to our water in our watershed. They're at the terminal end of our lake. And we know from the construction of the Derby Dam and the divergence for agriculture, what it means for extractive industries to come and take at the detriment of the fish and the detriment of the people. I'm really so glad to see you guys considering this today. I think it shows the potential for growth. I remember back when y'all were voting on the web data center, I remember when Councilmember Taylor said, all I have to say is we're open for business. About data centers. So I'd love to maybe think about who do you guys serve, right? Who do you serve the industries that are purely speculative, that are losing money? I'm going to put on the other side of this, that this economy, this construction of hyperscale data centers for AI usage is not profitable. OpenAI, like all of these different companies, they're not making money. They're getting giant subsidies from the federal government because this data is being used for surveillance. Data is being used for war. It is not being used to our benefit. That need is artificial. It's not there. What we need is clean water, right? I remember Councilmember Reese, for example, saying, well, actually maybe data centers are good for our climate because AI can make fire maps. I was gonna say, we can make fire maps. We don't need data centers to save our climate. We need a city council that will protect us. And I just want to plug that on May 1st at 11 a.m. at the Believe sign, we will be doing we'll be getting together to call for against the budget mismanagement that we've seen so far. Y'all have been talking about increasing the police budget to be 37% of the general fund. Meanwhile, like, we don't have money for a clean river. We don't have money for outreach. We don't have money for housing assistance. So see you all there.
I'm Dwight George, and on today, Earth Day, and as a native every day, I feel it is incredibly important for people to speak out and protect the only land we have. This land, so important to me and my family and friends and my child, deserves to be cared and valued for more than what can only be taken from it. The data centers being spoken about today, like those already around this country, would cause so much damage to an already drought-heavy land that is also now clearly acknowledged by the council as the fastest warming city in the USA, that it is not only irresponsible, but irredeemable to allow its practices to continue. The earth as a whole contains only about 3% of fresh water, and these data centers consume thousands to millions of gallons of it a day, equal to what thousands of your citizens would need every day just to be able to live their lives. With these centers' main goal to power AI, it seems too simple to point out that this artificial thing consumes too much of humanity's real resources, all while not being either reliable or the all-saving intelligence that these centers and its owners want you to believe it is. The trade-off of giving so much of what we rely on for our livelihood to something so unstable makes no sense. In a county where the city is allocating so much of its funds to the police department and the surveillance of its own citizens around the main water source we have here, the Turkey River, to then allow major corporations to do so much with so little oversight is such hypocrisy and the opposite of what you are here to do for us. To give that kind of power to something that's biggest concern is profit at the loss of so much for your people should not be allowed. Like so many times before, you may be voting for something presently, but we are talking about the future for so many. There is no reason to go into it so blindly. Support the moratorium or the total banning and show the people of this land today that you support them too.
Followed by Deandra Presswood.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Sheridan. I'm a graduate student at UNR, and I've lived here in Reno for about 7 years, and I grew up nearby, so I've loved this town.
You're a Renoite.
I'm a Renoite
Okay.
through and through. So I'd like to speak in favor of C1 and to urge you all to pursue a moratorium on the development of data centers. There's been lots of well-articulated arguments so far, so I'd like to present some data on one of these data centers, which is the Keystone Data Center. So the size of the Keystone data center is 12 megawatts. This is the equivalent of running 120,000 desktop computers 24/7. The cost, data center construction costs on average between 10 to 12 million per megawatt for a basic data center. For AI focused, this could be much higher. Local estimates from members of our community come out to about 200 million initial build costs. Cooling. So this data center on Keystone uses a closed loop cooling system, which in theory addresses some of the water concerns people have had. However, it still takes a lot of water to use a closed loop cooling system. So it takes roughly 30,000 to 60,000 gallons for the initial fill up and an additional 600 to 1,600 gallons per month, not to mention the waste that is produced by the chemicals they use to ensure this closed loop system. Energy, the trade-off for this closed loop cooling system is that it uses significantly more energy, about 10,950,000 kilowatt hours per month. In dollars, that's about $1,204,500 per month, the equivalent to 12,166 average Reno homes, and approximately 2.5% of the entire city of Reno's total electricity usage. Tax breaks, we've talked a lot about maybe what these could bring to our communities. However, 75% personal property tax break is what this has, meaning that the data center will only pay 25% of their total property tax bill, That means that they would only have to pay about $1,255,000 on an estimated $3,130,000 yearly bill. Sales tax reduction as well. They have a 2% flat rate. Normally, every resident in Reno must pay an 8.265% sales tax. But this data center only has to pay 2% of that massive amount for equipment supplies purchased.
Around data center uses in our city. Better late than never, I suppose. My name is Cullen McGinnis, CULLEN-MCGINNIS, and I am an organizer with the Sierra Club Toyabe chapter. We are the largest and oldest grassroots environmental organization in the state, representing over 30,000 members and supporters. I'm here today to call on you to put a temporary moratorium on new data center applications and to adopt strict regulations around data centers to safeguard our communities and landscapes from their destructive impacts. When I talk to people in Northern Nevada and other Sierra Club members, data centers are the #1 environmental concern that I hear. Across the country and in many cities just like ours, data centers set up shop, incentivized by state and local governments, and then proceed to exploit the landscape and the people who live there. Communities have seen power bills spike, pollution of their air and water, and a constant hum of noise that disrupts communities and lives. Pollution of the air and water is an existential crisis for many places that have welcomed data centers without proper guardrails, and until this point, we have been headed down that road. Morrow County in Oregon is one such example. They saw a massive influx of data centers and then afterwards began to notice that rates of cancer and birth defects began to increase exponentially. After an investigation, it was discovered that the data centers were concentrating nitrates in their water through evaporative cooling and then re-injecting it back into the water table, contaminating the drinking water of an entire community. We have numerous lessons like this from across the nation, and it would be foolish of us to not learn from them. We are the driest state in the nation, and we need to have a ban on evaporative cooling and only permit water-efficient cooling systems while making sure that more efficient systems are treating their water or funding treatment infrastructure so it doesn't fall onto the taxpayers. We also need to do what we can to incentivize the use of renewable energy. The CEO of Nevada Energy is quoted as saying that he believes the power grid could quadruple in capacity to power these data centers. I know the cost being passed on to customers from this build-out is not under the purview of the City Council, but it is still valid to bring up how most of this infrastructure will be gas-powered and not from renewable energy. This basically makes it impossible for us to meet our state climate goals, and the city can have a role in requiring clean transition tariffs for new data centers, as well as rooftop and parking lot solar panels to ensure that developers use more renewable energy and minimize air pollution. Speaking of air pollution, diesel generators are commonly used as a backup power supply for data centers. These diesel generators can be noisy and dirty. We are calling for the city to require that all data centers use Tier 4 backup generators or lithium-ion batteries as their source of backup power, which would reduce air and noise pollution. Data centers already voted for and approved by this body are planning on using dozens of low-quality backup diesel generators, polluting the air we have to breathe. We also need to make sure that these incoming projects are zoned appropriately on existing utility corridors and far from neighborhoods, schools, and sensitive habitats. We cannot accept at the end of this process of implementing regulations to have by right approval. Every data center needs to be able to pass scrutiny of public process and community members who deserve to be consulted and involved at every step. I'm calling on you all to rectify the mistake made last year when this body failed to pass a moratorium or formulate regulations around data centers. We have an opportunity to address the concerns of the community on this important issue. Please support a temporary moratorium and strict regulations. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. Thank you for your sustained attention this morning. My name's Laura Fallon. So many of the talking points I've heard by financial interests in favor of data center development revolve around government budgets coming up short, the stance that the way to close those budget gaps is through diversification, and that the primary option on the table to do so is data center development. With that, I'd like to invite you to consider a couple of things. First, two of the main sources of income currently keeping Nevada afloat, Nevada's bread and butter, if you will, are one, folks moving, coming to retire here because there's no state income tax, and two, the outdoor recreation / live entertainment industry, yeah? If data center development exacerbates our heat waves, pollutes our air quality, increases our utility rates, no matter what the state income tax is, do you think Nevada will continue to be a place that folks move to in the same numbers for that income? With public resistance mounting across the country, if Nevada becomes known as the state that moved forward with the highest concentration of data center construction that did not, quote, miss out on becoming what? Silicon Valley's dumping ground? Do you think people will continue to pick it for its outdoor recreation, for a live entertainment getaway? Data centers won't diversify or supplement our income. They will cannibalize the little income we currently have. The second thing that I'd invite you to consider is whether data centers are the primary budget deficit proposal on the table because of the unique abatements they are being offered. If additional industries were offered the same abatements, would other options be coming forward? Ones that maybe don't undercut our bread and butter, perhaps even complement it. Just for example, one thing I know about folks considering where to retire is that in addition to state income tax, they care about access to healthcare providers. Not only does Reno not have a level 1 trauma center, Renown Regional Medical Center is the only level 2 trauma center between Sacramento and Salt Lake City. Cities in 2 entirely different states than Nevada. If Renown and other hospital systems were offered the same abatements, perhaps they would invest in such large-scale capital expenditure projects that not only bring construction jobs, but also a wide array of others here for years to come. Please vote at a bare minimum in favor of agenda item C1. And until we have common sense business models, plans, and regulations in place, please expeditiously call for a vote on a moratorium, not conveniently after elections.
Wendy, take it away.
My name is Wendy Baroli, and my family has been in Reno, Nevada since 1918.
What?
And yes, 1918. And they're not fancy people. They were farmers and ranchers. And we obviously rely on the importance of good, clean water and clean air and clean soil. I'm here right now, though, because all the arguments have been made about water. All the arguments have been made about soil and air. But some of the arguments that we haven't heard, and it's very important to understand, is that the council is trying to make up, and the region, not just city council, is trying to make up for huge, huge losses. Grants from the federal government, money from the federal government flowing to our cities and to our counties. And data centers tell us that it's going to be an easy job because we can come in here and we can help fund this. Well, now we've heard all the reasons why data centers can be bad for our area, but what we don't really understand is that this is actually about military contracts. We understand that AI, in the sense of hyperscale AI, is completely different than small data centers. And we need to actually make a differentiation between that. Because hyperscale data centers drive militarized surveillance, militarized equipment, and it's all related to contracts to our federal government, to our state government that we get from the federal government. And that's probably why this movie is moving so fast. It's moving very quickly because there is going to be a stop to this, and it's happening across our nation. And small little tiny towns like Story County and places like that, they allow the data centers to come in because they're desperate for schools and fire trucks and just basic information. But the truth is, this is about job loss. AI will create in our area actual job loss. And what are we going to do about that for the future? In the last year, here are just some empirical numbers. Microsoft, 680 employees. IGT, 782. IGT is planning to lay off another 820 employees. I know for a fact, because my mother's husband works there, that they are using AI to replace these artists. They are using AI to replace these mid-tech jobs. So while AI data centers look like a good thing short-term, they are probably one of the worst things in our state, because our state doesn't have anything but extraction and home building to kind of keep our industries going. You need to think about long-term jobs, because middle-class white jobs are not going to come back once AI takes them over. I think it's very, very important that it's not a moratorium, but it's an actual ban, especially within the city of Reno. I would also like to mention quickly that, you know, this whole idea about closed loop safety, ask yourself what happens when water scales the pipes and what they have to use to remove the scale and where that's going to go in our water system.
Every year of my life. And I'm here to echo what everyone else has said, that our desert community cannot handle the strain on our water resources that is presented by unregulated data center construction. We need to develop very strict regulations for these data centers if we construct them. And I urge the council to develop and adopt a moratorium on the construction of data centers until regulations can be implemented. I urge that we use the time that we gain from that moratorium to develop the strictest possible regulations for the data centers.
Josh Abear. I'm a Reno resident. I'm one of Devin Reese's constituents. I'm also a candidate for Congressional District 2.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
I'm not going to duplicate what other people have said about the water and the power, but I would like to add to it. First, for these data centers that use, I have a PhD in physics. So when I look at data centers, I see something that takes energy and power and turns it into money and heat. That money leaves Reno, the heat stays here. So if we have a facility like the one on Keystone, that's a 12 megawatt facility, that's like taking the energy of 10,000 homes and putting it in a single location. So that's going to increase the heat in that location. And there have been a recent preprint study showing, at least for these large hyperscale data centers, that they can increase the local temperature from about 3.5 to about 15 degrees. So it has an important influence on local heat, and that's not something that we can have in a city that is the fastest heating city in the nation. And then when it comes to these non-evaporative cooling systems, I think the one in Keystone is not entirely non-evaporative. So it will still be using water. But even if we have an entirely non-evaporative cooling system that's closed loop, most of the water that's used for these data centers in Nevada is used for power generation. So when you use non-evaporative cooling, it makes that data center less energy efficient. So what that ends up meaning is we're actually using more water for these data centers in a state like Nevada until we have requirements for them to have green energy power. So at this moment, I think we absolutely need to have a moratorium on data centers in Reno. And I think we need to be considering whether this is actually an appropriate industry for this city. And I want you all to think of these things as industrial facilities. These are not tech facilities. These are industrial facilities for producing the compute power that the AI and the cloud computing center, the industries need. So they should not be sited within residential neighborhoods because they produce a lot of heat. They produce a lot of noise, as people have spoken about, not just from the generators, but also if they have air-cooled systems. These fans are enormous and they're extremely loud and they run 24/7. And they also, these diesel generators do a lot of pollution. So as other people have said, we need to have battery-based systems if they're going to be based within cities. And they shouldn't be anywhere near homes or schools or any of these things. So I'll wrap up my comments here, but I hope I've added a little bit more to your knowledge about how these things work.
Keystone Data Center illustrates exactly why we need a community benefits agreement. A property, and this is why I do not believe in this city. I did not believe you guys did this. A property that was supposed to be served as an art space now generating privately residual income for landowners while corporate operators receive state abandonments. And that community now bears the infrastructure cost, gets no seat at the table.
Council, hello. For the record, my name is Aaron Sims. I have been a Reno resident only for 1.5 years, but I've been a proud Northern Nevadan for over 23 years.
Okay, all right. That's
We're
acceptable.
saved. But of course, I am speaking here today pertaining to agenda item C.1. And I also want to echo what everybody else has said, that I urge each and every one of you to consider putting at least, at the very minimum, a moratorium on any further construction of these data centers. Now, I did prepare to talk about a lot of the environmental damage and everything else, but I think that plenty of other people have that. One of the things I want to talk about actually is a little bit more personal. You know, when I found out that a new data center was opening up just 3 blocks away from where I live, I was like, what the heck are we doing? I understand zoning can be complicated. I understand that zoning laws and regulations can be complicated as well. But it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever that when you have neighborhoods, when you have residents living in close proximity to one another with restaurants, parks, schools, and we're not just talking about, for lack of a better term, people who are living, you know, at the lower end of the class structure, but also $15 million homes. Why are we putting in a data center? So ultimately, I just believe that at the very least, if we can slow this process or halt this process for the time being and really study what we're doing for the future of our citizens, and what we're doing for the health and safety of our community. That would just go so much, for everybody who's here today, but also everybody who can't be here today and who cannot speak on this issue. The other thing real quick is that I want to point out the fact that we all know that data centers have historically skyrocketed energy costs. And we only have one energy company we can go through. Working class people can't afford that in 2026. So please hear us, please consider this moratorium, each and every one of you. And I very much thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
So today, I just wanted to tell you some of my concerns. I don't have any specific data or information on the data centers because that information is very inconclusive. There's not a lot of precise measurements on how much energy or how much water or the ramifications of the air quality and the sound. And so the reason a moratorium is needed is because there's enough data centers in the United States that's shown in anecdotal evidence that they don't always do what they say they're going to do. And so my question to you is, if you're going to regulate them, what are you going to do to hold them accountable? Because if they pollute our waterways, and we already heard that we live in a terminal watershed, so meaning any pollution that happens will be with us forever, and any water resources they use, they will take. And so what does it mean when they violate those things? Is it just going to be an economic thing or just a fine? Because you can't buy what we have here, and that's what everyone loves. The environment, the water, the Truckee, the Pyramid Lake, you can't replace those things. There's no economic value on returning the ecological integrity we have on it right now. So the question is whatever regulations you give them, are they going to hold up their end of the bargain? And what is going to happen when they violate those? Because they will violate them, because that's what industry does. People make mistakes, accidents happens, pollution happens, things are wrong. And also on top of that, the things that they say they're going to do, it hasn't been proven. Closed loop data centers, the amount of water that they're going to use, the uncertainty is enormous. And so what does it mean when they're wrong and they just don't deliver? If they build it, is it just going to be a situation where, well, we've already built the data center now. We can't do what we said we're going to do. We're going to take way more water than we said we were going to. Too bad, too sad, which would be really unfortunate. And then also the jobs. I understand as legislators and council members that you guys need to help the economy. And data centers seem like a way to provide people a job. But the question is, are people even getting employed? And after they're built, what is that going to mean? How many people are staffed there? People said it's only going to take 11 people to run a data center. That doesn't really make sense as far as an economic thing, as far as jobs and employment. Is it really benefiting anyone is the question.
Good afternoon. I would like to show this really quick. This is where the data center is located. This is my house. We were never contacted, spoken to by anybody about what we thought about this. We were asked to come to city council meetings, and my husband, who is Jeff Schomburg, who built that beautiful Believe sign sitting back here, he came and he said there was a lot of talk about energy and water and money, nothing about the people or this neighborhood that this is going to be built in. As of today or up to date, there's not been any health impact studies about what this data center is going to do to our quality of life, to, sorry, let me look at my notes here. I'm a little nervous. It's, we stand to lose our quality of life, our livelihoods. Jeff builds in our backyard. He'll be subject to the noise, and that is a big concern. He already is prone to migraine headaches. I'm prone to vertigo. And this noise that's going to be produced has been already studied to show that it causes sleep deprivation, it causes headaches, it causes, vertigo, the things that we work to not have in our lives every day. And it's going to be 24/7. I come here to ask for the moratorium. And in any thoughts that you have going forward about approving or amending any of the city codes to accommodate these very understudied, barely regulated data centers, that you include the neighborhood, include the people that are it's going to be affected. I would personally love to see the halts of this until more study is done into what it's going to do to us. That's our home. We don't rent. We own it. We've been there for 14 years. That's where we make our living. That's where I plant all my plants and I want to grow old with Jeff at. So I hope that you will pass the moratorium and really look into what this is going to do to the people that you govern here in this city. It's important. And we ask you to think about us.
I just moved to Reno around 2 years ago, and it didn't take me long to realize how precious the Truckee watershed is and what a life source that is to this whole community in this area. The desert here is not barren, it's not destitute, it's beautiful. I fell in love with Nevada. I moved here from North Carolina. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And this watershed is incredible. And it didn't take me long to develop a really strong connection to the water. I've bathed in the Truckee, I've been in Tahoe, I've been to Pyramid Lake, and that connection only went deeper when I started working with River Justice and understood the perspective of Autumn and Beverly Harry, along with their late husband and father, Norm, who have done incredible work to protect this watershed, to clean up the river, and to protect the fish in Huipa. It's incredible. And my connection doesn't even go to those depths. I can't imagine the depth of connection for the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe. And to have them not be considered when you all are deciding on legislation over data centers that severely threaten their life source that they have protected already for time immemorial, and especially through TROA, a bi-state agreement. They need to be here. They need to be at the table. They need to be in this room. They need to be considered. The community, your public needs to be considered. We're asking for the moratorium because that you need to talk to us. You need to come to us. You need to go to your tribal constituents. You need to talk to everybody and hear all of our voices, because these data centers are a huge threat to all of our livelihoods, huge threat to everyone in this room, a huge threat to that watershed, to the water that I have grown to love and that is vital in the lifeblood for so many people in this area, including our tribal communities. Please take this issue seriously and properly consult your constituents and local tribes, and enact the data center moratorium previously proposed in February that you've already denied, so that you can adequately consult the public and gain the full consent of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe at the terminus of the watershed, and to develop ordinances that actually protect us, the land, and the water.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, the chemo was widely successful in diminishing my stamina and voice, removing my beard and 30 pounds, all of which are slowly returning. A small price to pay. Speaking of prices to pay, we are here to discuss, among other things, regulating new data centers and addressing the price Reno must pay to maintain them. These data centers are not unlike cancer, and they devour local resources and put the host's viability in jeopardy. Their only concern is their own growth and well-being. If left unchecked, they will deplete their host's ability to flourish. And like cancer, they don't care. Also, like cancer, they need us, we don't need them. And it's time to act like it. If we are going to allow any, and it appears we must, we need to create regulations that keep them in check so they add value to our community while not unduly depleting our precious resources. Fact.
Hello, it's my first time speaking at a Reno Hall. My name is Jason Miller. I'm a proud Reno-nite. I have lived here my entire life, so I am a
Wow,
Reno
that's
native.
very rare.
I am one of the co-founders and organizers of Reno Satanic, who gave the county commission meeting last year. And with the news of these data centers, this has now become a fight for survival. Mark Twain says, whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting. With data centers coming in and with the ecological damage that they could bring, this isn't just a fight for anyone. This is a fight for all of our survival. These things cannot go forward at the rate that they have been going through. So I am for this moratorium being put into place and put a hold until regulations are put into place to protect the citizens where these are being built and the damages that it causes to our environment. This is our one and only planet that we have. We should best take our own responsibility to take care of it and the longevity of it for future generations to come. As someone who has lived here their entire life, I would hate to see this place be destroyed and the natural beauty of this place be ruined by outside corporations trying to buy up our land and try to make a quick buck that gives no benefit to the people here.
Development decisions that are backed by evidence and development decisions that put our community at the heart of those decisions. Data centers and industry have lawyers and panels of people to make policy and advocate for themselves. And I truly believe that you are our advocates in what we do. And I also just wanted to echo that what happens in our community now will affect it for generations. And I want to live in a community that is green and also puts a focus and the energy into keeping our water clean and our air clean. Sagebrush doesn't mean that it's right for development, and I understand it is more affordable to develop an area that is not filled with trees, and sagebrush is easier to clear. But that is a habitat, and I think when we view it as a habitat and an ecosystem first, it really changes the way that we view development. Thank you for your time.
All right. Hi, Mayor Sheevy and the council. My name is Morgan Wadsworth, and I'm also running for Congress in CD2, which is currently held by Mark Amadei, if you didn't know. So I'm here today, like so many of the people here, to talk about the data centers and the unregulated growth that we are seeing of them in our community. Just recently, Nevada Energy said that the electricity required to power the proposed data centers in our state, let alone Reno, is 3 times the amount needed to power the entire city of Las Vegas. Nevada Energy is also reporting that they will need to use fossil fuel energy to meet the energy demands of all of these proposed data centers. And yes, some of our data centers use less water, but the ones that do use less water require more energy. And as many have pointed out, we only have one place to get our energy from in Nevada. And on top of these environmental concerns with our energy and our water, over the last decade, Nevada has granted approximately $457 million in tax abatements to data center developers for roughly a few hundred long-term jobs. This is revenue that we could have used for our schools and our local infrastructure instead of data centers. And as many people have stated, Reno is the fastest warming city in the country. Nevada is the driest state. We also live in the Great Basin region, where all of our water and the pollution that happens to it stays right here. It doesn't flow out or drain out into the ocean. It stays in the region. Hence the name basin, like a bowl or a sink. And here in Reno, we are on the Truckee watershed, and it drains straight to Pyramid Lake. We need to be conscious about what we are doing to our water, lands, air, and energy resources in this city and in this state. And so I urge the council to enact a moratorium on data centers. I also urge the council not to take any campaign donations from data center developers and their associates so that they can meet the needs of the community without any conflicting interests. And lastly, I also ask the council to please make sure you are contacting and getting consent from our tribes when making decisions that impact our environment, land, and water. Thank you again, and my name is Morgan Wadsworth.
Swan Lake is still contaminated. You're still putting effluent with PFAS in that lake. You are also pumping that currently by Tumwa's press release to American Flats, which you guys said you weren't going to do. There is a major problem here. Not only are you polluting our area, but then you're polluting another area on top of that. In our North Valleys, in part of unincorporated Washoe County that you have invaded without having the infrastructure in place to do what you need to do properly. That's why I am here. People are tired of traffic and not having responsive government. And that is your guys' fault. And that again is why I'm running. Tammy Holtstill for Washoe County Commissioner, District 5. And please take a look at this and respond. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tammy. One man standing. Take the podium.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'm Doug Thornley, Holland and Hart on behalf of NAIOP Northern Nevada. And I want to start by saying I appreciate everybody showing up, the thoughtful comments, obviously well-researched. General Del Papa is right. This is a statewide conversation. There's a reason that we don't use hyper-local environmental regulations. And that's because it leads to a patchwork that encourages industry to forum shop. So they do nothing for the indirect impacts of development. It'll move to Lyon, it'll move to Story, and the same thing will happen. With respect to the direct impacts of these types of development, the city's already using the most effective tool, the conditional use permit. And you see it working. If you average the impacts of the 3 data centers approved by this city in the last, a year, I guess, they use on average just under half an acre foot of water per year per megawatt of electrical usage. That's about the same as a house, one house. So in total, the impact of those data centers when they come online will be about 50 single family residences. Putting a moratorium in place will adversely impact the city's position with respect to economic development across the country. What you'll see is the industries that you're looking for, the industries that you're hoping for in the master plan, advanced manufacturing, modern advanced healthcare, university research, they'll go somewhere else because the digital infrastructure they rely on isn't provided and won't be provided in the near term. So just like any community can't thrive without transportation infrastructure like ports, like rail, like interstate highways, and those last mile roads that you take care of locally, you just can't get where you say you want to go unless we proactively develop this digital infrastructure that our entire modern economy relies on. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you
Good
so
morning,
much.
Mayor Shivi and council members. My name is Barry Levinson. I'm a retired physician and engineer and a member of Sierra Club, as you all know. As you also know, our Sierra Club group and other concerned citizens that you see have been pushing for some regulations around data center approvals for the past year and a half. We are grateful that the Reno City Council has taken the issue up today. In an ideal world, we would not have to choose between being able to protect our environment and energy bills on one hand and technological process and tax revenues on the other. But unfortunately, that is where we are regarding data centers in this new world of rapidly progressing AI. If the city of Reno is going to move forward with any future data center development, including at Stonegate, I would implore you to first consider whether the development is the best use of land and resources and is truly in the interest of the people of Reno. If the council decides to move forward with a data center development, then the approval process must be governed by an ordinance specific to data centers, and a strong one. This ordinance must include limitations on siting with adequate buffer zones between the data center and adjacent properties, and avoidance of sensitive areas such as anywhere close to the Truckee River. It should require water conserving cooling technology. It should require the best available diesel generator technology to minimize harmful air pollution, or better yet, use lithium batteries for backup power. It should incentivize renewable energy, including solar panels on the roofs and the use of new renewable energy from the grid. And the data center developers must cover the cost of all required infrastructure, including roads, sewer, water treatment, and firefighting services. Reno should not get stuck with those costs.
Environmentally, I feel like we've got the best tap water in the world. The Truckee River is delicious. And I don't want to see that get tainted by pollution and whatever that data center is going to put out. And not only that, but morally, I find it bad. And as a scout, I've always lived by the scout oath. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, and to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. I take that into consideration with all I do. And seeing what AI has produced, and including with many friends I have that are in the art community, seeing AI just strip other people's work and spit it out to be what they consider good, stealing ideas is not good. Alongside that, there have been multiple instances of AI abuse. In terms of there have been ways where it's fairly easy to manipulate. It has in a previous case as well. You can go on there and manipulate a bit to look at ways to end your life. And AI has also been used to create AI child pornography. I do not agree with any of this. I think it's morally reprehensible, and I think we need strict rules on this AI data center.
It was, in fact, going to be a data center. There's no reason to have that level of surveillance for a normal construction project. However, whoever's building that monstrosity knows that people hate data centers. And I'm guessing that they have a few images of me flipping off the construction site as I drive in and out of my neighborhood. Despite being a neighbor, I had no warning about the project and have received no information about impacts to air, water, and noise pollution, which are going to impact my neighborhood as well as Reno High School. There are houses right across the street from this data center. The Truckee River is by far the best thing Reno has going for it. Without it, we would lack our life-giving center. We're one of the fastest warming cities in the nation, and our climate is pushing the limits of livability. I moved here from Ely 19 years ago, and one day in July, when I was 9 months pregnant, we hit a record high of 108. Our house was not air conditioned, so I went down to the river, waded in, and just sat down. That feeling of cool water made me feel like Reno was going to be a good place for my family. The Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe has worked for decades to successfully return flows to the Truckee River. For the city of Reno and Washoe County to thoughtlessly sell off that water to corporations looking to build data centers shows a lack of care for the place we live and the people who live here. AI is an existential threat to our society. I edit academic books and papers, and over the past 2 years, I've had to add a no AI policy to my contract after receiving AI-written manuscripts that were unreadable and total nonsense. AI is the newest way that capitalism has found to make people's lives a little bit worse, while making a few corporations much, much richer. It steals the intellectual property of writers and artists and delivers a product riddled with hallucinations, misinterpretations, and bias. For us to compromise our clean air and water to facilitate AI is so short-sighted. Unfortunately, Nevada has a history of selling off our natural resources to outsiders at ridiculously low prices. An opportunity to start to reverse that trend today. My personal request is not just a temporary moratorium, but a permanent ban based on my understanding that multiple data centers have already been permitted. As far as one of the fastest warming cities in the driest state in the nation, we can't afford to sell off our quality of life to make tech companies rich. Follow the lead of other communities that have decided to permanently ban data centers. Just yesterday, Marshall County, Indiana voted to permanently ban data centers, and we should follow their lead.
Better, so I'm going to keep it short. But leaving data centers unchecked without the possibility of dialogue is completely antithetical to the idea of community that Reno so often postures about, present company included. I know that each of you is intelligent enough to understand that contradiction, and I hope that you are dignified enough to honor it. Mayor Shivi, you were praising the arborist who spoke earlier. I guess what trees need?
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
And like C. McComb said earlier, activism against data centers isn't going to stop. So I encourage you to just make it easier on yourselves by approving C1. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mia.
Anthony Postman.
Okay. Curtis, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Curtis, the floor is yours.
Lovely. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Curtis Fernandez. I'm a local Reno citizen. When I was younger, I grew up in California. I know that's unfortunate for a lot of us, but I grew up knowing that Water is an important resource. I spent most of my elementary school doing art contests, trying to save water. So to be here today is really nice to know that water is really important, and I think a lot of us here understand that. So with that being said, I want to say that I am here to speak in support of C1 and to advocate for a robust policy that protects the watershed. I'm fortunate enough to be here today at a, maybe not very easy time for a lot of local people, but I'm here talking in front of you with the support of a lot of local students and a lot of community members, knowing that the local Truckee watershed is important and crucial to the success and the future of Reno. We need a government that works for us and not against us. I heard that today. And increased regulation on data centers is one way that you guys can show us that you care. Protecting the Truckee watershed is vital for our future, like I said. And I want to thank you all for considering your roles in hearing local voices, including those of our tribal communities. So before we consider the economic benefits, I think that it is more important that we think about the human effects as well. So thank you guys very much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, hi, my name's Reese Lamp. Happy Earth Day, everybody. I think it's so special that this is happening on Earth Day. So I grew up in Las Vegas and I had the honor of getting a full ride scholarship to come swim at the University of Nevada. So go Pack. With that being said, obviously swimming, water, they go hand in hand, right? So for me, I fell in love with Reno when I saw it. I couldn't believe something like Lake Tahoe existed so close by when all I knew was Lake Mead. If you've seen it, you know. Floating down the river is one of my favorite activities during the summer. Swimming across Donner, things like that. Knowing the detrimental effects that data centers have on communities has really broken my heart. Seeing water turn brown because of these data centers is breaking my heart. Water is critical to human existence, and these natural bodies of water make Reno a special place. More regulation on these centers is crucial to keeping our community safe. So as someone who's given a scholarship to swim in this city, I will do anything to preserve the water in this city. A moratorium on data center development is absolutely necessary until more guardrails are put in place. I am in favor of agenda item C1. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right.
Anthony Postman,
The one
followed by
and only
Colin
Anthony
McGinnis,
Postman. I've
followed
got
by
to brag
Tammy
a little bit.
Holzel.
Anthony is an incredible artist, and I believe you've released a few albums, and you're working on another one. But I'm going to say, because this is how small Reno is, Anthony's sister Madeline, she was my best friend in first grade. And so I have such a fondness for your family. And matter of fact, your dad was an allergist. And I remember everyone loved your father because he kept everyone from the sniffles and all those things. So, but I just wanted to highlight that's how small Reno is. And it's so nice to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, City Council and Mayor Seavey for this
The floor is
opportunity
yours.
to speak upon citizenship, connection and disconnection, and environment. A little over a year ago, a group of us gathered here to protest the proposed building of a Jiffy Lube not far from here in the middle of a school zone in a mostly residential neighborhood. If it hadn't been for a special contractual question regarding the use of the land for development, we were told that this project would have already been given the green light, that this is the way things work with developers and the city. I want to proffer that just because this is the way things work does not mean that this eager green light for development is the right way forward for our community and for the environment in which we live. In Braiding Sweetgrass, author Robin Wall Kimmerer writes about the ancient indigenous antagonist known as Wendigo, whose insatiable appetites cannot be fed. Wendigo howls from endless hunger, even as he feasts ferociously upon all of the earth's gifts. Maples and oaks that shade, bees and birds that sing to us as they spread and pollinate our food, horses who are companions and guides through vast sweeping country, and the very water that feeds, cleanses, and nourishes our bodies and our lands. All of this Wendigo consumes whole without rest, never stopping, never satisfied. Wendigo destroys all that sustains us, our land, air, and water. It seems that Wendigo spirit is alive and well within government at large, from our local city council right up to the national juggernaut. All seem to favor the rampant development of industries which consistently favor and benefit the riches of the few at the cost and peril of human health and well-being and the greater irreparable toll on our environment and climate. In a setting where we individuals are encouraged to consolidate trips in our cars, to economize fuel, to use our smart thermostats in eco mode so as not to tap the grid as heavily during peak hours, especially if there may be heat and fire risks, and to water on only odd and even days, it is unfathomable to think about large-scale users who will devour magnitudes more power on a 24/7, 365 basis. How is it that with upwards of 30 data centers in Washoe County alone, that we are only now gathering as a wider community to talk about the power and water impacts? Could we possibly heat up our status as fastest warming city in the US? And not to mention the broader environmental and social impacts. I would implore our governments to marry the priorities of profit, people, and environment like a green business would in hopes of stewarding all of us into a sustainable future. Please, data center moratorium now.
Of the Water Over Data Alliance to vocalize my support for agenda item C1. I am approaching this topic as a community member who lives and has spent my entire life at the terminal end of the Truckee River watershed. I am currently calling in from Kuyuipa, also known as Pyramid Lake. Regardless of the specific level of land or water use, any data center development has potential impacts to the flows of water quality of the Truckee River. Approval of data centers should not proceed without full, prior, and informed consent from the sovereign nations who are the traditional stewards of this land and water. Indigenous peoples of so-called Northern Nevada, including Numu, Northern Paiute, Washoe, the Washoe, and the Nuwa, Western Shoshone, depend on the health of all waters within our homelands. It was only 120 years ago when the water diversion project Derby Dam was constructed, which resulted in massive water theft that led to an 80-foot decline in Pyramid Lake, the draining of Winnemucca Lake, and the local extinction of the ancient Lahong cutthroat trout. The Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe has spent decades in water litigation to regain our water rights, and our people continue to care for the endangered and threatened fish species, the Kuyui and Lahong cutthroat trout, which have sustained our communities and way of life since time immemorial. These fish species cannot survive without water and increased nutrient loads coming from upstream industries. The environmental impact assessment of any proposed data center should include a hydrologic analysis of source and potential impacts with respect to water quantity and water quality, and to ensure tribal water laws are abided by, including but not limited to the Truckee River Operating Agreement. I respectfully ask the City of Reno to take the lead in adopting a moratorium on data centers, and I agree with the previous speakers, a full ban on data centers within city limits, while also developing data center policies on a city level that include mandatory input from tribal leaders and indigenous communities. Pijamu, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My name is Kiki. I'm also a representative of the Water Over Data Alliance, and everything I've written has already been said, but I'll go ahead and read what I've wrote just to get it on record. I'm here today in support of agenda item C1 and to encourage the Reno City Council to vote to put in place a moratorium on data centers. There's no reason to rush these projects without careful consideration of the impacts to our community. Data centers use an extraordinary amount of water and energy resources, and we don't need more extractive industries that will ultimately hurt our neighborhoods by increasing the cost and availability of these resources. The city of Reno needs to put protections in place for the community. How is opening Reno's door to businesses that are water and energy consuming entities like data centers going to help with the catastrophic climate change? We just had the warmest winter on record. As many have mentioned earlier, this is the fastest warming city in America, and water is life. Data centers are also known to pollute and contaminate water supplies, and I don't want to be drinking contaminated water. Data centers use all sorts of chemicals to keep the water from evaporating quickly and keep their servers cool. There can also be leaks in any and all types of systems, and mechanical components will absolutely release heavy metals as they age. For these and many other reasons, carefully considering any requirements for building a new data center is absolutely imperative. You guys should be transparent with the community and allow all to make sure there's a forum for us to participate and understand what building data centers entails. This is not something that we should risk our limited water supply on, and that's why the city should define limits to water usage. That's why I'm requesting that City Council put a moratorium in place before data centers are built throughout Northern Nevada. The moratorium that was previously reached by City Council was not meaningfully evaluated or discussed, and I encourage the Council to revisit it now with full consideration and public input, especially while centering Native voices. Thank you.
I don't want to reiterate what you've already heard today. I don't want to belabor those points. I broadly agree with those and wish to echo those sentiments that you've already heard. When thinking about this issue in data centers, I think it's poetic to apply it to an entire life cycle, such as our natural world naturally exhibits. We know that our water comes from our lovely Sierras and the snowpack, and then it melts and forms our rivers and then goes to our basins and our aquifers and whatnot. When thinking about these data centers, one thing I wanted to add on to is, again, the life cycle of these things. At the end of the terminus, when the natural cycle is completed, when these data centers are either outdated or unnecessary because technology has hopefully done a leap and bound beyond it, what is going to be the requirement to remove these things? Because we already know that e-waste is an exceptionally difficult and challenging material to deal with already. It's not something I can just throw into my trash and think, oh, that's going to be fine. It's going to go to where it needs to go and be processed the way it needs to be processed. These multitudes of tons of pounds of e-waste will be something that could just be left for us to absorb and deal with if we believe the chief of IBM saying that there is no way that these data centers at the current expenditures that are being expended across this nation and the world could possibly be profitable, which means that there will be losers and there will be winners. And we have no idea who that's going to be. So if the losers build their data centers here and they become insolvent and they say, oh, we're out, we gotta close up shop, we're leaving, good luck, goodbye. I worry about us having to take on the ownership of cleaning up those materials, as we do have an EPA Superfund site just up the road a little bit away, because I think we all know what mining has done for the boom and bust generations of cleaning up afterwards. Don't want that to be our history too in the modern era. Further, I also wanted to add that data centers aren't exactly like us. The fact that they get state benefits to only pay 25% of their property taxes and 2% of the sales tax, that's not me and that's not you. So we're not going to say they start off as fair partners should they meet those requirements to get those kind of abatements, which they will, which is why they hire 11 people, because that's what it requires in order to get a minimum 10-year abatement.
But everybody feels strongly about this. You've heard facts, you've heard anecdotes, you've heard personal emotions, poetry, art. These people care about their city. Now, a lot of what I initially wrote has been covered. I wanted to cover what I thought were less talked about negative aspects of data center development, which was water use, energy use. I wanted to add that the noise, scientists have been studying the effect of urban noise since the 60s, since the beginning of suburban culture. And now, over the last few years with data center development, scientists are still studying the effects of low hum steady state noise, which is long waves that are not adequately blocked, as well as other types of waves by buildings, so they can go further. And that hum your brain can tune out, but people who are prone to migraines or have any level of sensitivity will feel it. People who don't notice it do have a stronger or a higher chance of health problems, regardless of whether they notice it or not. That was one thing I wanted to add. The other thing was the economics of this. 11 people for about 2 acres, I think, for that keystone. That's a crazy ratio of jobs to land, especially in the middle of downtown. So just from that one common sense data point, it doesn't make sense extrapolating from that.
I want to close that we have offered you a lot of information. So now you have it. There's no, we didn't know, we haven't heard, we haven't waited long enough. I hear a lot that government is slow, that it takes a long time, that proper channels need to be addressed. But I've also seen government move very, very fast when it wants to. So you have information, and I am very excited to see what you do with it. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goldbaum.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Frankie Sudell Papa, and it's a privilege to be up here before you today. I came a year ago, February, to ask for a pause when we were looking at the original data center request that came before you. That vote was 4-3. I'm here today because one of my favorite deputies was a San Francisco 49ers football player. And I called him the coach because he had a saying, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. And I would say that's really appropriate today. I think that in listening to this, what's exciting to me, look in this room. I mean, what's really exciting is to see all the young people engaged. I mean, normally where we go these days, it's dinosaurs like me and gray-haired folks that, you know, but it's really encouraging to see as many people engaged as they're engaged. What I'm hearing, and I don't need to repeat it, but I can tell you, I've pestered some of you over and over again, even as late as this morning in this regard. But I think that it's time. One thing I would point out that we need to do, I went to the consolidation meeting of the fire protection. It's time to have a consolidated meeting of some sort in this regard, because it's not just Reno's problem. It's our county's problem. It's our state's problem. And in the end, every community is what we together help make that community, just as this state is what we together help make it. And frankly, there's a lack of planning going on, and we all know that there are budget deficits everywhere. We know that. But I don't think this is the answer. I do think, however, we've got to look at this in a comprehensive way. I appreciate each and every one of you for your service. From what I'm hearing out there and what you see nationally, every time a data center goes in, the utility bill goes up on average of 15%. And if they pull out, who's going to be left with to pay for those bills? It's going to be the ratepayers. There are a lot of things that have been said today. I appreciate your time. But Jackie, one thing I would ask you to do, where is NACO? Where is the Nevada League of Cities? I mean, frankly, I'm going to go back. I've talked to my legislators. I'm going to talk to them again. This is not just Reno's issue. This is a community-wide issue that has to be addressed in a community-wide basis, and it's even a state issue, because all the concern that's been expressed about the tax rebates, those are legitimate concerns. So in any event, a failure plan is a plan to fail. It's great to see you all, but it's really great to see all these people here.
Repeatedly have put off public meetings about data centers. I am here to encourage you, once again, to amend Reno's code to include data center regulations. Not just vote to explore the possibility of data center regulations, because such a vote might be politically convenient for you given an upcoming election, to actually adopt data center regulations. Not just any amendment, we need a good amendment. I hope that a desire for uniformity with our neighboring jurisdictions does not result in a weak amendment or no amendment. Data centers are coming to Northern Nevada. They already are. They love our low latency fiber connectivity to the Silicon Valley. You should be proactive and plan for the data center growth that already has started in Reno. Reno is not going to get as many hyperscale data centers as the more rural nearby counties. However, it appears that at least one developer wants to build big data centers here. Just as importantly, moderate and small data centers need responsible regulations as well. Cumulatively, these data centers can have impacts on things like our grid stability, our air quality, our services and infrastructure, our non-data center economic development, and our housing needs. Even just one unregulated data center can have an adverse impact, regardless of whether it's hyperscale. If your home or business is next to a data center, the noise matters. If the toxic emissions from a data center's diesel generators affect your health, it matters. If there is a fire and toxic runoff from the water used to fight the fire goes into the Truckee River or a lake or onto the property of a neighboring home or business, it matters. If a data center doesn't properly dispose of e-waste or hazardous materials, it matters. The water issues go far beyond on-site water consumption for cooling. The power plants used to generate electricity for the servers and cooling use a lot of water if they're using fossil fuel, and most of them are. More significantly for today's purposes, the water use and discharge can have impacts on local groundwater as well as on rivers and lakes and on our water and wastewater infrastructure. When data centers come to Reno, regardless of whether they are serving people from Reno or, more commonly, California or elsewhere, they should be required to be good corporate citizens of Reno. There must be common sense requirements and there must be truthful and transparent permitting processes with public meetings and hearings and no by right permitting. Thank you.
Hello. This is Yesenia Wells for the record. Total in agreement to everything that's been said previously as far as against the data center developments that we have going on in our community right now. And I just wanted to share a native proverb that I had heard from Chief Seattle, and I think it's very important for us to really understand its significance right now. It is, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. I have 2 young children that I want to give the same life that I had. I want them to be able to float the river. I want them to be able to plant the vegetables. I want them to be able to enjoy the wilderness and the mountains. So I think it's very important that we remember this is not our land to destroy. It is ours to protect for future generations.
Nevada proposed data centers would require staggering amounts of new power. Nevada's largest utility says it will need roughly 3 times the electricity it currently uses to power Las Vegas just to serve these facilities, and it does not believe so. It can do so without a major expansion in its use of fossil fuels. At the same time, analysts estimate the resulting projects could drive a 40% increase in the state's power infrastructure, driven largely by only one industry that may or not be sustainable in the long term. We already know what that trajectory looks like. A recent investigation into applications for new data centers shows that some will be powered by massive new natural gas plants being developed to largely bypass the grid and provide power solely for data centers, a trend known as behind-the-meter power. But these will be emitting millions of tons of greenhouse gases every year, more than the annual emissions of some entire nations. On top of the climate impact, there are local strains. Each large data center can use enormous amounts of water for cooling, potentially billions of gallons a year, right here in the driest region of the country. That competes with residents, agriculture, and existing businesses. So what should Nevada do? First, require and incentivize data centers to run on new, additional clean energy and to use the most water efficient and energy efficient technologies available.
Like many other people said before me, I'm not going to iterate what the folks who have spoken prior have said because they're probably saying it better than I ever could. But I would like to mention that regulation here is not enough and that a temporary moratorium on data centers is simply a Band-Aid fix for a long ongoing fight that people have been living and dying for generations now. There are battles happening all over the country against the construction of the infrastructure of AI-focused data centers, and it feels like a moral and ethical obligation to oppose these technologies and their infrastructure from poisoning our land, water, and human and non-human neighbors. It is imperative to realize that these battles are actually existential. Green energy is not green. It takes lithium batteries, and lithium is just another extractive industry which requires mass amounts of fossil fuels to sustain itself. Solar panels and batteries are not enough. The only thing that stops these pollutants from contaminating our land, air, and water is a complete halt on the construction of these data centers. How, on one hand, are you going to approve surveillance cameras that supposedly prevent encampments of people who are literally just trying to survive from polluting the river, and on the other hand, there are companies that are getting a 75% tax break while directly polluting that river? As a former commenter mentioned, what is the accountability process for data centers if they break their regulatory promises? I want to remind everybody that if the only cost of a crime is a fine, that is not a crime, it is a price tag. I don't want a community benefits agreement. I don't want regulations. What I want is a community that I could raise children in. I want clean water. I want a view of the mountains. And I want to hear bird song, not diesel generators and turbo-powered fans, and I definitely don't want to enrich literal fucking bloodsuckers like Peter Thiel.
And kind of just things happening around the area. And unfortunately, with the subject of data centers, I did end up recently losing my job simply because of how large my data center videos have gotten, just the publicity of it alone. Contractors reached out and did not want me working there. I was told it was nothing to do with my work ethic. It was quite literally just my social media platform. However, with my job loss happening, I do want to talk about those actually working on the data centers right now, especially because they're probably not able to be here today. A lot of them are working 10, 12-hour shifts. If they don't choose to work overtime, they're most of the time let go. It's one of the only jobs in Reno, Nevada that actually pays enough for a livable wage, which I'm just kind of sitting here like I just lost my job and the data centers are being built and they pay really well. I don't know where the job market is headed in the future right now. It seems kind of bleak. We're seeing the trades push quite a bit, and it is for the purpose of data centers. And with that, with my social media following, I have gotten the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that work in construction and that work on the data centers. Mental health is a crisis. They are 5 times more likely to die by suicide than actually working on the site. And that is because mental health is, I mean, they're just doing the same thing every single day. They don't have time to go hang out with people after work. They maybe get a day off in a month. They don't have time to go hang out with people outside of their job. And that really concerns me. Not all data centers are the same. You know, like, of course, data centers exist in medical facilities. They exist in a lot of places. I mean, we all have photos kept somewhere. We all have videos kept somewhere. But this data center being built on Keystone, this is a totally different level. They've even said it themselves that this is specifically for AI business-driven, things happening in the city of Reno. Centra has already stated this in 2020. That is what the purpose of the Keystone data center is for. The fans that thing has, the sound it must produce, we will never hear things the same once that thing is turned on. Like, think about just literally a car driving down the road. We will never hear that the same as we do today. So enjoy the silence we have right now if this continues. We all know what a data center is and what it's quote unquote supposed to do, but what is the product? And I leave you with that question. Is this worth it for our future in the city of Reno?
We have the opportunity to lean into the increasing recognition of Reno as a prime destination for outdoor enthusiasts, for people who are interested in natural spaces, who want to camp, who want to explore our mountains. If we become this mosaic of data centers, of warehouses, we're going to turn those people off. And I believe that that is the most promising future for our community in terms of recruiting more residents to move to our area and encourage increased tourism. So the fate of our incredible city is in your hands. And as your representatives, I hope that you preserve and protect our resources and our lands and really lean into becoming this mecca for outdoor enthusiasts and people who really appreciate our beautiful natural spaces. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to start with some comments and then I'll get to question probably in round 2. But I want to start by acknowledging all the concerns we've heard from residents today, organizations and people like the Harry family, water over data centers, the Sierra Club. The issues surrounding water, I think air quality, energy, and long-term sustainability are real in our region, and they deserve to be taken seriously. We have identified standards for water use, energy demand, or any of the long-term impacts, some of which are being developed as we speak, right? The question about human health impacts, for example. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. We need a pause. Right? We need to support a new moratorium on data centers so that we can take the time to put a real framework in place before the projects move forward. Now, some might say, why didn't we do that before? Well, you can't put a moratorium or you can't regulate businesses that are already in the queue. So when those businesses come and get in your development queue, we're riding with the rules that we have at the time. Today, we don't have any in the queue. And so it's a good time for us to put a pause in place so that none can sneak in and be believed that they'll be under the old rules. So for communities that have instituted moratoriums since the first of the year. So on April 14th, so just a few days ago, Maine became the first state in the United States to pause and enact a moratorium statewide on data centers. In California, Monterey Park and Oakley have instituted data center moratoriums. In Colorado, Colorado, Larimer County, Georgia, Clayton County, Newton County, in Illinois, Champaign County, Coles County, Indiana, White County, Minnesota, Carver, Louisiana, the city of New Orleans has a pending moratorium. North Carolina, Orange County, Chatham County, Gates County, Oklahoma City has a moratorium. The truth is that moratoriums happen, and in this particular case, the moratorium idea was not on our agenda because it was not suggested by the topic that was on our agenda. It came from the community. The community is the one that put the moratorium conversation into place. It did not happen at this body. And so it's a very strange thing, lots of curious things happening today. But what is encouraging is that people are here. Mr. Shipman, I want to ask about what I would propose as a motion, and you tell me whether or not this meets the open meeting law requirements for today. So I'm not making a motion, I'm asking you a legal question about whether this motion would pass muster. So it'd be a move to initiate an amendment to Title 18 Annexation and Land Development Code to review and modify the requirements for data center uses and direct staff to return to council with an ordinance that includes a moratorium on new data center approvals. I would further direct staff to provide recommended standards addressing water usage, energy demand, air quality, siting, and ongoing reporting requirements, and to coordinate that work with regional partners and the state.
All of them have said that they don't necessarily see the value in a moratorium at a local level because we've heard this is a regional and this is a state issue. It's not just the city of Reno. It's the same river, it's the same air, it's the same resources. So I would say the timing is very, very peculiar right now. Never at regional did anybody who sits from this dais on regional say anything about a moratorium. They never said anything like that. We always said we were going to support the regional approach with everybody. So Madam Mayor, I'm not going to go into all of the things that we heard. I am going to ask for the opportunity to make a motion before we hear a motion on moratorium. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you so much. Obviously, there's a lot of feelings around this conversation, and I think for me, understanding sort of where we can continue to be impactful in the regional conversations. Obviously, some things are within our control and some things are at the state level that we don't have jurisdiction over. And that's been identified multiple times throughout this conversation. And the conversations have happened a little over a year ago. Our planning commissioners sent us a recommendation. And so this conversation isn't something that's new or anything that hasn't had enough runway to have the conversation today. And so being able to talk about this in this context, I think hopefully can provide you as staff and arm you with opportunities and whatever you need to be able to continue to stay engaged in that conversation at the regional level and being able to provide some of those protections that folks have been asking for during public comments and that you've heard echoed up here on the dais as well. And so I think just the way that you have the motion recommended today, I would definitely be in favor of initiating a text amendment and looking at ways to further incorporate some of the things that you've heard today into the land development code that we have. Thank you.